everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Sisters interview. Tonight we have a special guest, His Grace Floki from Artemisia. Welcome, Your Grace.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. The people from Artemisia rallied really hard for us to ask you. I would have asked you anyway because I think you're awesome, but it was pretty cool. You're very beloved.
Oh, well, that's nice to know. I don't know how that keeps happening, but we'll keep taking it.
So I'm Sir Rithkin from Ontier. I'm a knight and a pelican in Ontier, and the co-host of this show is my sister Aishaxi, who is a Order of the Laurel in Ontier. And we're real life sisters who play the SCA together. She wrote me into it so long ago, and I've never left. So
it's all my
anyway, I don't know if you've seen any of these before, but we usually start with your origin story. So if you want to tell us your SCA origin story, where you found it, when, why, how, all of that, that would be great.
Okay, well, going way back in time, I started when I was 19. I was recovering from knee surgery. I had my knee injured in a bar-related incident. I'll just leave it at that. And I was recovering in bed and I couldn't walk. And a good friend of mine came into my bedroom one day and said he'd seen a newspaper article in the local university, the University of Utah newsletter. And they had the SCA for the local group had put an ad in that. And he said, let's go check this out. And I said, no. Absolutely not. I thought, no way, that's going to be a nerd fest and I'm not going to be involved in anything like that. But I couldn't escape him. He just kept coming into my room every day. My mother would let him in. He'd come into my room and go, we're going, let's go, we're going. Finally, when I could walk again, I said, let's go. And so we went to the local fighter practice and I walked in the door and there were a lot of fighters at that practice. It was an unusually large practice. There's probably about 20 or 30 fighters. And that's a large practice for Artemisia, big practice. And I was hooked and he ran out the door and never came back. That was basically it.
It was too nerdy for him.
It was too much. It was not as nerdy as he hoped it would be. It was far less nerdy than that. So he saw steel armor and guys really getting hit. And I was like, oh no, I can do this. Okay, this is okay. And he was like, no way, that's too much. I'm out of here. So
he wanted magic spells and elf ears.
I'm not sure what he was expecting, but he was not expecting that. And I was like, oh, this, I can do this. So yeah, so I stuck around and met some really great people really fast. And they got me involved very quickly. So
about what year was that? Do you?
Oh, that would have been January of 1990. Yeah. So yeah, I think the first time I actually fought at an event on my, like for real fought would have been June of 1990. I had a drum kit. My parents were musicians. Everybody in the family had to play a musical instrument. I resisted playing a musical instrument. I tried everything. I had a $700 drum kit. I sold it to get my first helmet and set of legs, knees, and elbows and everything. So that's how I got going.
So who was the person at the practice that sort of took you under their wing and mentored you and helped you with armor?
The first person I met was Viscount Sir Shannon Irontree. He at the time was just Lord Squire Shannon Irontree. And he and I made a deal that he would work on my armor. I bought armor from him. He'd work on my armor as long as I could hit a pel. So if I went to his house and hit the pel, as long as I was hitting the pel, he'd be hitting my armor. So I think I did 8 hours every Saturday on the pel. And it was he was not happy about that. He thought maybe I'd last 2 or 3. I was like, no. I can see you in the shop. We're going to go. Shortly after that, I met Viscount Sir Raphael the Rogue and Mistress Kyrie when they were living down here. And while Raphael was finishing up school. And they got me started in the SCA and kind of taught me how to play and taught me all the other things that I needed to know besides hitting a pel. And so they really got me involved.
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
I just made a note. We need to interview them.
Yeah, you should probably interview them. Yeah.
Definitely. They're good people and very interesting. So
yes.
multifaceted.
Yes. So you're super interested in historical basis for your armor and for fighting and stuff like that. We've talked about that before. Is that something you came to the SDA with, or did you find your love for the historical after?
No, it was definitely after. I came into the SCA with every kind of fantasy idea that you would have. It really started with Raphael Curie. They were very good at me coming and saying, oh, let's do this. And they'd go, yeah, but let's do this instead. And they would steer me towards being much more historical. And it was one of those things I didn't know I had a talent for until someone introduced me to it. And when I started doing the historical research, I really developed a real serious passion for it. I've never not liked the fantasy stuff. If somebody wants to do fantasy Viking stuff, I'm like, hey, that's cool. I like that too. But the historical stuff is really intrigued me almost from day one. I think by the time I was fighting, I was thinking of ways to be more historically accurate and trying to find as much resource information as I could on anything I was interested in. So it's something that I learned in the SCA, that's for sure.
Very cool. And how has that affected other parts of your life?
Well, I mean, now I get invited to do lectures at colleges. I'm friends with a few professors here in Utah. I've done lectures at Weber State University here in Ogden, Utah, talking about everything from, you know, the early Viking age. I did a great lecture series for a while on the Norman invasion of Sicily and southern Italy and Byzantium. It's changed my life completely. I just did a photo shoot on Friday for a guy who's doing a book series, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what he's trying to do. I haven't gotten the full details, but he's doing a series. He wants to do a series of photos of warriors from different historical eras. And so I went in to do some preliminary photos for the Viking Age. So it's changed my life tremendously. It's also taught me that, you know, I had a mind for this sort of thing. When I was 19, I was kind of a punk kid. I didn't really think I was going to amount to being able to do much, but it really helped steer a course for my life and everything I've ever tried to do. So it really has made a big difference on my life.
And did you this is kind of a weird question, but were you college educated? I mean, did you study that kind of stuff in college, or?
Well, I wasn't in college. I was a high school dropout. When I dropped out of high school at 19, I was serious trouble when I was 19, when I got into the SCA. But I did eventually go to college, get my high school diploma, go to college. And I started as a history major in college, and I did that for a little while. But the history scene in the mid 90s was pretty bitter. I had a lot of professors talk me out of being a history major pretty quick. They talked me out of it. So I went back to school and went into sports medicine and followed that track instead, something I could go and get a job in.
Yeah.
But I've always had a passion for history. I haven't read a nonfiction book probably in 25 years. Every book I read is a history book. I'm up on a lot of the current publications and everything. I just consume it. It's my passion. So.
Can I ask a Duke interview question, Rifkin?
Yeah, of course.
If you were to require reading for one of your squires or anyone on the path to knighthood of one book, what would it be?
It would be Geoffrey Descharnais' Book of Chivalry. Descharnais' Book of Chivalry is probably the most practical book of chivalry that was ever written in any time during the medieval period. It's very secular, secular for the 13th century. Most of the other documents that are written on chivalry are very religious. This was not. And it's very practical, and it's good advice, I think, for anybody engaging on anything. He's very down to earth. You know, he talks about avoiding rich foods because when you're on the field, you're not going to be able to eat those things. He talks about avoiding too much luxury in your daily life because it'll make you soft. And he talks about, you know, when you're in the hall of a greater man, it's better to keep your mouth shut and keep your ears open. I mean, it's just real good practical advice. Another one is called French Chivalry by Sidney Painter, and that was written in the 1940s. And he did a real deep dive into real chivalry, the way that it actually functioned in the Middle Ages. And it's quite a bit different than the chivalry that the SEA kind of tends to promote. And it gives, again, another real practical insight into what chivalry looks like and how to behave and comport yourself. I think both of those are really handy to know, to get that kind of background. It takes a lot of the pressure and guesswork off of how to behave and what's chivalrous, what's not chivalrous, and what is chivalrous, and where the line is exactly. So those are the two I've recommended to all my squires to read those.
So your focus on persona and kit has shifted over time. What did you start with, and what piqued your interest to keep changing? Because you've had several names too, right?
Yeah, I have. I have. Well, I started off Viking. I did start off Viking. I stopped doing Viking I stopped doing Viking in about 1996 because I was reading the same information over and over and over. Now, this is obviously before the internet was a big thing. I mean, there was an internet. It wasn't much more than just little chat rooms, of course, in 1996. But there wasn't a lot of information. There was no real new excavations going on. And I just felt like that resource was tapped out. I just was like, I'm just kind of spinning my wheels. There's nothing new happening here. So I took kind of what I thought was like the logical progression. I said, well, let's study the Normans in France and in England. And, that seems like, okay, if you go from Viking, let's step up to Normans. They were Vikings. And there was so much more documentation and things so much more information on the Normans to get into that really kept my interest for quite a while. And part of the reason I went back to Viking was my son. He was always like, Dad, Vikings are cooler than Normans.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's looking at me. He's nodding his head. He's my tech support tonight. He's like, yeah, they are way cooler than Normans. But the internet, I switched back to doing Viking in 2014, but even in 2009, the information on the internet on the Vikings was blowing my mind. I was like, holy cow, now there's so much more information. And with Vikings being so popular in popular culture right now, what that has led to is actual universities are getting way more funding than they ever have had before to go and do Viking excavations. That's why you're hearing about a new ship being excavated in Norway every day, and a new find in Denmark every day. And even in other countries in England and Latvia and Lithuania, you're finding Viking stuff because there's money in it for these universities now. If they can build up a museum piece that's all Viking, that is a crowd draw. And so with Vikings being in the popular culture, it's really benefited academia. So now there's so much more information and so much new stuff coming out. It's just too much. It's irresistible. So I was like, yeah, we'll go back to do Viking because now there's more to know. There's more to find out. Now I'm constantly being surprised by what I'm finding now. So it's just whatever sort of is leading in academia is kind of where I lean to. It's like, as long as they're bringing me new information and new resources, I'm excited. I want to keep going with it.
Very cool.
It's super exciting times right now that I study Central Asian steppes, like BC, 450 BC, and I can't keep up with all the information right now.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's awesome, but it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's a fire hose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is sometimes.
So I'm going to take you back to fighting for a minute.
Okay.
Did you squire to somebody?
So I was man-at-arms to Raphael for a very short period. And then I squired to Duke Thorfinn the Just. And Thorfinn was squired to Duke Brian Tarragon, so I kind of got brought into that household.
How did you hook up with Thorfinn?
Well, I mean, Raphael and Thorfinn and Brian were all friends. They were all hanging out together, and when I was just a little non-belt, I was hanging out with all of them too. They're not too much older than me, six years at most. So we were all kind of in the same peer group. And I was just going to fighter practices with Thorfinn. And I think what it was is, Thorfinn has got a really good mind for training. He's a school teacher. Well, he's a principal now. But he just kind of knew that we kind of clicked, and that I was somebody that he could train and he could teach. And he was very selective with his squires. He only ever took one squire at a time. And he wouldn't take on a new squire until that squire had been knighted or had, quit or vanished. And we just met at a fighter practice and just seemed to click. And so he asked me if I wanted to be his man-at-arms the day of his coronation as his second reign as King of Atenvelt, and I was like, oh, the king just asked me if I want to be a man-at-arms. I think the answer is yes. So it really worked out really well. I had a great relationship with Thorfinn. We had a really good situation. I loved being a squire. I loved every minute of it. I enjoyed it immensely. In fact, I think I've regretted sometimes going, maybe I should have just stayed a squire. Knighthood's hard.
I say that all the time. Like, maybe I should just stay a squire.
Yeah. There's a lesson to all you squires out there. Enjoy it. You think it's terrible, but wait till you're knighted. Then you're like, man, those were good times. Those were good times. Yeah.
So I've heard great things about Thorfinn. I've never met him, but several people have told me that he's one of the most regal people they've ever met. So how was it hooking up with him right when he was starting to reign? Did you get exposed to all of that kind of reign stuff right at the beginning?
Yeah, I became his man-at-arms, I think it would have been September of 91. So I'd only been playing for a little over a year, and suddenly I was thrust right into court. Yeah, Thorfinn can look regal. He was very laid back and very matter of fact with things. And so I got a great education standing behind the throne for him for about 4 years. I think I did 2 reigns with him as King of Atenvelt as his man-at-arms and squire. And he was always very honest about what this is good, this is not good, this is how you do things, this is not how you do things. And he was always very upfront, very straight about that. But he's a very natured guy. I know he's watching right now, so I better say something nice about him, but
He just laughed that I said that I've heard he's regal. So I suppressed a smile.
I did that.
That's what I remember from the conversations. Maybe
he's very regal. Very regal. Very regal. You're going to interview Duke Basil, and Duke Basil will tell you more about that. And I'll let Duke Basil step in that bear trap.
All right, next Monday.
Yeah.
I'm going to lay out the trap.
Yeah.
So how long were you a squire for?
Little over 4 years. Yeah, I mean, man-at-arms for a year, and then squire for about another 3 years. So in total, about 4 years. I got knighted very quickly. I will admit, if I had been a knight voting on myself, I would have said no. I could have used another year or so. I got knighted very quickly, but I had a good support group again, who made no bones about telling me I got knighted too fast, and so they were ready to kind of get me up to speed. And being an Atenvelt knight living in Artemisia, I had to go down to Atenvelt on a regular basis and kind of prove that I deserved to be knighted, because a lot of guys in Atenvelt didn't know who I was. And so you had to do a lot of work in Atenvelt to kind of get noticed. And I think that was good. I think it taught me that once you're knighted, you're going to earn your knighthood every time you put on the belt. It's not like you got knighted and you're done. Every time you go to an event, every time you put that regalia on, you have to earn it again. And that really taught me that lesson in real stark detail. I had to kind of go, and every time I put that belt on, anytime I went down to Australia War or a coronation or anything like that in Atenvelt, I had to be able to prove that I belonged there. And so it taught me that it was a valuable lesson to learn.
I think a lot of people look back at themselves and say, I wouldn't have voted for me, because I think that first couple of years after you get knighted is very eye-opening. And there's a lot of work there. Like there's no coasting. There's a lot of work there. So,
and some people dig down and do the work, and some people disappear.
Right.
Yeah. It can break you. It can make you or break you as a knight. It really can.
Yeah.
It really can.
So do you give people, like, when you go to vigils and stuff, do you give them advice regarding that?
No.
Okay.
I'm awful in vigils. I really don't know what to tell people, because this year was my 25th anniversary of my knighting. After 25 years, what do you tell somebody? I've seen so many guys get knighted after me. I've seen so many of them fall into the same traps I fell in. No one could talk me out of falling into those traps when I fell into them. I can't talk them out of it either. All you do is just kind of go, okay, they'll tell you something and you'll go, all right. Here's what I tell people when I go into vigils. I say, listen, and I say this for all the peerages, I say, listen, the first 10 years as a peer, you're going to change the world, right? You're going to change everything. And I go, then the next 10 years, you're going to want to throw that regalia in the trash every time you get out. You're going to hate everything and everyone. But then the next 10 years, things smooth out. That's what I tell them. And I get a lot of horrified looks because they realize, this is going to be for the rest of your life.
And
if you make a little called out.
Is that what you tell people too?
No, that's what I did.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say I have a hard time at vigils too because I feel like they're very contrived. And usually if I have been involved in that person's journey, I have already given them advice. So no judgment.
Yeah.
At all.
I've gone into vigils and sometimes just said congratulations, and and if when I've been king and I put people on vigil, I go into the vigil and go, okay, here's what we're doing tomorrow. This is when it's going to happen. You don't say anything smart. You just I got business to handle. Let's get this tackled. So yeah, it's just, there's just no way to warn people what they're in for. They won't believe you.
Yeah.
And it's only in hindsight that they'll go, oh yeah, that was right. So, I tell my squires, it's like, look, this is your journey. You're going to make a mess. You're going to fall. I'm not going to warn you when you fall. I will pick you up. I will dust you off. I will say, don't do that again. But I'm not going to try to, warn them of things. I gave up on that. That's the kind of thing you do your first 10 years as a peer. Oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. You get, the next 10 years, you're like, I don't care what happens to you. So you get over that quick.
I think there's definitely value in letting people make their own mistakes and learn from them. Because it's really the only way that it sort of goes into your brain that, oh, that's what they meant.
It is. And sometimes people will say, hey, listen, when I was this place you are at, I did this, and don't do that. Sometimes that's just so you can come back later and do an I told you so. And I'm not interested in that either. Growth hurts, it's painful, you make mistakes, you screw up, you mess up, and that's how people learn, that's how we gain experience, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So
right.
I just laugh. I heard some news today about some peers and some young peers, and I just laughed today. I was like, okay, well, none of us ever did that. We never thought of that. So it just keeps going on and on and on. So it is what it is.
You see the same thing over and over again.
You see it over and over again. It's the same. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. They do the same things over and over and over. It's just part of the journey of being a peer, I think. If anything, it's just testament to the fact that once you get the peerage, you're not done. There's still a tremendous amount to learn, and I know peers down here that have been peers 20 years longer than I have been a peer. I've got more to learn too. So who knows 20 years from now what I'll be thinking and saying.
Right. I think, and you can't really tell people to approach it that way either. But if you do approach it that way, it's a much better experience, I think, because it's just, you're on this constant path and process of learning and trying to be your best self. And you're never going to be perfect, right? So we're all perfectly imperfect human beings.
Yeah. Well, the first mistake most of us make with the peerage is we get the peerage and we think, well, that's that journey done.
Oh, yeah. No.
Not even close. In fact, when I got knighted, the first thing Duke Brian said to me, he hugged me and whispered in my ear. He said, the lesson's just begun. And then Duke Thorfinn hugged me and whispered in my ear. He said, that's my belt. I need that back. I'll get you another one tomorrow, but I need that back before you leave tonight.
We were going to ask you about regalia. So he gave you a belt, but that wasn't the belt he meant to give you.
Well, so I got knighted by Duke Man of Adenvelt. And they were not expecting me to get knighted that day. So they didn't have a lot of regalia ready for me. So Duke Sean said, well, I've got spurs. I'll give him my spurs. And thankfully, Sir Bertrand here in Arnhold in Artemisia had given Thorfinn a chain for me years before, and Thorfinn had just kept carrying it around. So he had a chain ready, but Thorfinn had just his belt. So he just gave me his belt. He's like, come over to my house. We'll make a new belt tomorrow. So I was like, okay, that's how this goes. All right, I got it.
So no legacy belt for you.
No.
Have you passed on those pieces of regalia to other people, or do you still have them?
Oh, they're gone. They're long gone. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing I learned too, is anytime you see a piece of regalia you like, grab it. You know, it doesn't matter if you're on Merchants Row at Penzic and you see a nice chain, or you're in the fabric store, you see a chain and the little, you know, section where they sell all the little knickknacks and things, you grab it. You're like, oh, you know, I'll need it, or somebody will need it, or something's going to happen. So yeah, I don't have any of my original regalia. They're gone long, long ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. I know that you have a pacemaker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How long has that been? Did you have that when you started fighting, or did that come in later?
No, I got that when I was 39.
Okay.
I had developed an arrhythmia in my late 30s that needed a pacemaker. It's not like I don't have heart disease or a heart block or anything like that. I have a really strange heart condition. I was the Dr. House of my hospital for a while. You know that patient?
Yes.
I met with a lot of cardiologists from across the country who were visiting. They'd come in and go, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. So I got that when I was 39, 40. That year I turned 40, and I just actually had last August of 2019, at the end of my last reign, I had a new one implanted. So I'm on my second one, and so that's been new over the last decade. That's a new thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask you, like, did you have to relearn anything about fighting after you got that, or how did it change fighting for you?
I didn't have to relearn how to fight. It was more I had to work with my cardiologist to get the settings on the pacemaker to a place where it would allow me to fight. Pacemakers are not built for, I mean, I was a personal trainer and a fitness instructor at the time. So I was very physically active. I was running a 5K 5 days a week. It took a little while to get the adjustment worked out. And once I figured out what the settings were, they could go in and they can change how fast my heart rate speeds up and how fast my heart rate slows down and things like that. Once we got that figured out, then it was no problem. The major issue with the pacemaker was just figuring out how I was going to protect the device physically while I fought. A lot of people think that pacemakers literally go inside the chest cavity, and they don't. They just go under the skin. And you can't break the pacemaker. Everybody's like, oh, I don't want to hit you in the pacemaker and break it. They think it's like my off button. They'll hit it, it'll break, and I'll drop dead. And none of that's going to happen. But they can shove it into my armpit or push it someplace under my skin it's not supposed to be, and that would be unpleasant. And we tried a lot of different things. And really, ultimately, the best thing was for me to just always have a shield in front of it. So I pretty much, for the last 10 years, just decided I'm just going to fight sword and shield. If there's a tournament where it's multi-weapons, I just don't participate. And that's been the best way to keep it protected, because it's way over on my left side. It's deep. It's really close to my shoulder on the end of my pack. And that's been the best thing. Armoring over the top of it was miserable, because if it rubs on the skin, in fact, I used to have that lamellar armor in one of the pictures you guys will show. It used to rub on it so bad that the doctor's like, whatever you're doing, stop. We're going to be able to read the serial number through your skin. And they weren't kidding. They were like, please stop this. And I was like, okay. So lighter armor and just keeping a shield in front of it is a better way to keep it safe. I've never had an issue with it. Nobody's ever hit me there. So
That's great.
never had a problem.
That's great.
So how long from getting knighted before, I guess we should back up. When did you start fighting in crowns? Were you fighting in crowns before you were knighted?
Yes, I was. I was taught, this is one of the great things I think Duke Bryan and Duke Thorfinn really impressed upon me, was that crown tournaments had very little to do with in Atenvelt with winning crown. It had a lot to do with showcasing what you could do as a fighter, and also finding where your limits were as a fighter. I'm trying to think. The first Atenvelt crown tournament I fought in was probably, I'm going to say, May of 1994. I don't remember fighting in one earlier than that. That seems about right. No, 90. No, May of 1994. it was just to go out and say, this is who I am as a fighter. This is what I can do. And then finding out what you can't do. And I learned in crown tournaments that sometimes you stop progressing in the list, not because you suck, but because you've exhausted your skill set. And it's just, you're fighting an opponent. I don't know what to do to this guy. So you just kind of make a mental note of it and you kind of go on. So yeah, I fought in those for about a year and a half before I got knighted. Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up, Rifkin?
Sure. Did you ever have a problem mentally with a tournament setting?
I had problems mentally in tournaments up until I won my first crown, which was about 12 years ago. I could not get past the mental aspects of fighting. I had a very hard time with that. Yeah.
So how did you fix that for yourself? Did winning crown just fix it, or did you do something before that crown?
Oh no, I did a lot before that crown.
Okay.
Fortunately, I'd gone to school. I went into, like I said, I went into sports medicine and exercise science. A big part of that was sport psychology and discussing on how to the mental states to excel in athletics and things like that. I ended up training quite a few athletes. So you had to have a basic understanding of sports psychology. We talked about things like visualization and being able to visualize. Visualization's a skill that is critically important to all athletics, including fighting, especially fighting. It's one that I think a lot of guys tend to poo-poo. Oh, that's visualizing. Well, when you're shadow boxing as a boxer, you're visualizing. That's visualization. You visualize the success that you want to achieve. But you don't visualize, oh, I win, yay. You visualize the hurdles that are going to come in your path. For example, if I was going to go into a crown tournament, I'd want to know who was in the list. I'd want to wait for that final list, who's entering and who am I really going to be facing. You look at the list and you go, okay, now who do I know, who do I not know? And then you look at the ones you know and you go, okay, I know this is a threat, this is a threat, this is a threat. What's that fight going to be like? And you try to remember if you fought that person or seen that person fight. And if you hadn't seen them fight or fought them, you'd look online and see if you could find footage of them fighting. You try to visualize each fight. So visualization was a big one. But the biggest thing that I learned to do to help me psychologically was to be prepared. Bobby Knight saying, right? Everybody has the will to win, few have the will to prepare. Preparation is not a month before crown going, oh, I think I'm going to win this crown. Okay, let's go and do an extra few practices, or I'll hit the pel a few times. That is not it. That's not it. It's a much, much, much more complicated thing. I have guys who come to me and say, I want to win crown next month. What should I do? I said, well, we can get you crown for ready in 7 months, but we can't do anything for next month. I would begin planning for crown 6 months, at the very least 6 months out. So basically after like the April crown here in Artemisia is when I would begin to train for the October crown. But usually I've started in February. So I'll start training in February for the October crown. I've been really lucky that I had people to train with who would push me well past my limits. That's another important part, is to make sure that you're training super hard. It's just like in the Army. You want to train harder than the actual competition is going to be. And you want to make sure that you've covered every base you can. If you're going to start developing a new technique before that crown tournament, you've definitely got to start 6 months at least before then, because it's going to take 3 months before that new technique is intrinsic. I hear guys going, well, I've got this new shot for crown next week. Like, we won't see it in crown. We won't even show up. That's nice though. I'd like to see that in crown next year, So preparing really is a big process.
What does your preparation look like? Like, what do you do for training?
So first of all, it's a lot of cardio. I'll really push the cardio. Now, cardio, that doesn't mean I'm going to go out and I'm not running a 5K every day again. It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of aerobic base building. It's a lot of what would be called VO2 max uptake training, which is not so much trying to increase lung capacity, but trying to increase the amount of volume of oxygen that gets into your bloodstream. That's stamina. Stamina is not how high I can get my heart rate. It's how fast my heart rate will recover once it's gone up. So I want to work on that. So a lot of walking. I don't do a lot in the general area of weight training, except to maintain joint integrity. It's very light weight training. And then it's a lot of practices with a lot of guys I know who are going to really push me hard. It's deciding what weapon form I'm going to use when I go into the list and sticking to that and nothing else for 6 months. It's deciding if there is going to be a new technique that I'm going to be using in Crown, then to really hit that hard, but not decide. I know a lot of guys who go to Crown and go, I'm going to restructure the way I fight. My whole technique's wrong. You still can't, you're not correct 5 years, 10 years of fighting in 6, 7 months. You're going to go in with what you've got. And a lot of guys were like, we've got to get rid of all the things you're weak at. That's not happening either. You've got to learn to protect the things you're weak at. Or if you can, turn them into strengths. That can happen. It's a common saying, turn a weakness into a strength. Yeah, that's not as easy as it sounds. But at least be aware of what you're weak at. But Sir Magnus, my former squire, you guys have met, he, my second Crown win, he took me out and he looked at me and he said, okay, the last fight I was going to get before Crown tournament, he said, we're going to fight for 15 minutes. Just keep fighting. So if I got hit, I'd call it, but we wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop swinging. We hit 15 minutes. I thought I was going to puke and he wouldn't let me stop. We ran another 2 minutes. He's like, nope. He's going, hit me, hit me, hit me, hit me. No, hit me. No, I'd hit him. He's like, no, hit me. No, hit me. I mean, he pushed me to the brink where I literally just collapsed on the grass and couldn't stand up. And I thought, when that process is done, mentally you say, that's it. I couldn't possibly be more prepared than I am now. So if I go to Crown tournament now and I lose, it isn't because I failed to prepare. It's because I legitimately encountered a better opponent, and that's okay. You don't have to feel bad about losing to somebody who's actually legitimately better than you. But we tend to kick ourselves when we lose a tournament because we know we didn't do everything in our power to be prepared. So it's just about making sure that you've done everything you could possibly do to be prepared and making sure that you covered every single aspect of that. And that instills a level of confidence and comfort when you're in the list that just takes all the pressure off. Suddenly you're not worried about who you're fighting or what the next fight is, because you can tell yourself, I couldn't possibly have done anything else to be prepared. So I just find that a lot of guys go into the tournament with a lot of pressure because they feel like they know they could have done a lot more. They could have started months sooner. They could have gotten to more practices. They could have found better training partners. They could have lost 10 pounds. They could have improved their endurance. They could have done a ton of things, and they didn't do it. And that's what hurts when you lose, is when you know that you lost because you just didn't do everything you could do to prepare. I've never heard anybody lose a tournament to a better opponent who felt stupid, because usually the guy that beats you is the guy that beats everybody. And that's okay. So that's really what I learned the first time I won Crown, was to just be tremendously prepared as much as possible in every possible way.
Very cool. So tell us about, do you want to look at pictures, Ishaksi, or do you want to
look at
they're
pictures?
good?
And then
Okay.
go with brains. We can do that. There's not a ton of pictures, so.
Okay.
That's before I should say that's before I started personal training. I lost about 80 pounds after that.
I was gonna say, it doesn't really even look like you.
No, that's the heaviest I was. I got into personal training because my father about this time had a quadruple bypass, and that's what made me interested in getting to the gym. I lost about 80 pounds after that. So that's probably 1998, 2000, something like that. So that's about 20 years old. I still had red hair and some hair left. Yeah.
I think bald suits you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I'll tell you, even if I had hair that could grow hair, I'd probably still shave it all off. So this was at a fighter practice, and this is probably about 20 years ago. This is when I started to do Norman stuff. I was doing The latest time period I tried to do was probably the Edward the First. So this was my attempt at an Edward the First kit. It's missing a lot of chainmail. But again, that's probably also about 20 years old. Back when I used a heater, I haven't used a heater since 2003.
Oops, sorry.
That's right. So that was last summer, right after the tournament we had. That was at Kelwyn's Knighting.
We were there.
Yep. That's from my first reign as king. That's the lamellar I was talking about. That after I fought in that lamellar for a long, long time, and after I got my pacemaker, I was like, oh, that's got to go. This is me trying to make an attempt at an Italian Norman kit. Again, it's a lot more chainmail, but the chainmail in the SCA becomes expensive and it's not very effective. So you kind of have to make accommodations for as best you can. I'm not sure. Oh, that was Uprising. Yeah, I remember that sunburn. This is this again about 20 years ago. This is when a few of us down here were doing the Company of Pembroke. So that's me and Duke Sean and Duke Conrad and Duke Basil and Baron Sir Gregory and Baron Sir Conrad. And again, that's about 20 years ago. We did an unofficial tournament at a gentleman here in Idaho, in Lava Hot Springs, had made a medieval farm on his property. It was really cool. And so that's us doing we did a little pot of arms tournament there. It was unofficial. It was just for fun. So that was a lot of fun.
Were the banners the property owners, or did you get?
No, those were ours. We had made those banners. Actually, Sir Gregory made all of those banners for us. He made the banners and the poles, and it was a big project he'd put together for all of us so that we could all have matching banners for the company.
They're super cool.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. Let's see, this was, I'm not sure where or when that was. That's not too long ago. That's fairly recent.
I'll take this opportunity to thank Her Grace Cortland and Heloisa, Mistress Heloisa. Did I get that right?
Heloise, yeah.
Heloise.
Mm-hmm.
I know her mundane name, but I don't know her name. They kind of last minute today pulled a bunch of pictures for us. So thank you, ladies, very much.
Yeah. I want to say that's probably about 5 years ago. Yeah. And that's a couple years ago. That was at a Pelican ceremony for Baron Owen down here.
I love that you can look at the picture and know what event it is.
I've got a good memory for this sort of stuff, I guess. That's this last reign. So this was last summer. I think that's Malatesta's Pelican ceremony. That was from my second reign, and Heloise took that picture. So it was a good picture. Everybody calls it my Playboy picture. In the Playboy position. That's from a crown tournament in 2018, and I was just fighting buys that day. I was just out having a little fun with some people.
Was it a cold day?
Yeah, it was. It was a cold and wet day. Yeah.
That's a lot to wear.
Yeah, if I'm wearing that wolf skin when I fight, it's cold. Yeah, that wolf skin keeps you warm for sure.
Awesome.
It looks really cool. And the crown you won in 2016, I think you wore that fighting.
Yeah,
crown.
I did. Yeah, in 2016, when I fought with Gwen, we sat and talked about kind of what our dream crown tournament would be like. What would that look like? And I said I always wanted to do the Viking thing with the bear skin. And so there was a debate: should we get a real skin? Should we not get a real skin? And then it was, should we get a bear skin? And we found a company that was selling wolves that were harvested in the First Nations in Canada. And so we thought, all right, well, this one was humanely taken and it was living a good life. It's a big wolf skin. That thing's like 70 inches from nose to tail. It's a large wolf. And so we decided to do that. And so that was just a sort of, my second crown, what we did is I changed my entire kit. I had a brand new helmet. I had the wolf skin. I made an entirely new kit because I wanted to throw guys off psychologically. I didn't want them to think they were facing the same old guy they'd seen a million times. And it kind of had that kind of impact. So
There's a new sheriff in town.
It
Yeah.
actually does have that kind of impact. You upgrade your kit and people are like, oh, who's that?
It changes things a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a real tactic in, even in UFC and boxers today. That's why the big entrance and why the music and everything. Well, it's because it's intimidating. It does help. Yeah.
And you make all your own helmets and everything?
No, I don't make any of my own armor or helmets. I make all the fabric stuff. That helmet was made for me by a young kid down here in Artemisia named Gustav. His SCA name is Jake Hansen. This helmet is crazy too. The story behind it is that I had my old helmet was beaten to crap and he was doing pretty well as an armorer. And I said, could you take my helmet and beat some of these dents out? And he said, sure. And then I kind of went, could you just build me a new helmet? And he said, well, I guess, what do you want? He hadn't really attempted much. So I found the specs. That's obviously the Yarmunbu helmet from Norway, found in the mid 10th century.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Everybody knows that.
I think anybody, that's the quintessential Viking helmet, right? That's the helmet everybody thinks of when they think of Vikings. And I found a German reenactment site, and they had extrapolated from the surviving pieces, which isn't much, the actual engineering specs for the helmet and for the complete helmet. So I sent him the engineering specs, and he said, can I make it just like this? I said, well, make it out of 14 gauge stainless, and you can make it just like that. So the only thing welded in that helmet is the bar grill. And he did a fantastic job on it. It's a beautiful helmet. It's the safest helmet I've ever fought in. It has really strange properties to it because of the way it's constructed. And he did a fantastic job. And he's like 19, maybe 18 or 19 when he made that.
Wow.
Yeah, so real gifted armorer too. It came out great. I love that helmet. And that was a coronation, my second coronation. That was just me. Somebody got a photo of me just watching King's Champion. And then that was me as Crown Prince. That would have been this January 2019. And then that's me in that second Crown tournament. That's the new kit I showcased. I kind of brought out for the first time that nobody had seen. So that was a brand new kit. No one had seen any of that. Not the coat, not the helmet, not the wolfskin, any of it. So that was a fun day. That was a good time.
Awesome. And you don't worry about fighting in these penannulars?
Nope. No, because if you turn them down, if they're pointed down, then when you move, they're going to point into you.
Right.
Because if I lean forward, those penannulars are going to point into me instead of out. So as long as they're pointed down, they're not much of a threat to anybody else. And also, if you can see, they're not really coming over the edge too far. Yeah. So, yeah, there were no problem.
I think they look really cool. I've never seen somebody close their fighting kit with a couple of bananas.
Yeah. I had to pull them because to get the wolf skin to work, I was trying to figure out how the Ulfhednar in Old Norse, the wolf cloaks, would wear these skins. There's a lot of saga material on them wearing wolf cloaks. They don't describe what a wolf cloak is. And so I was trying to figure out how to do it. And we tried a bunch of different ways to attach it so I could wear it while I was fighting. What we eventually did was I just ran a little running stitch, a little basting stitch, and stitched the wolf skin around the collar of the coat, and it would pull the coat back. And so if I didn't have it pinned up top, it would pull the coat off. The weight of the wolf skin would just pull it off. So I basically got it pinned shut like that so that it will stay on. But it worked. It's not something I've ever wanted to repeat. Yeah, I don't want to do that twice, but it did work for that day, so it worked out all right.
Looks really good. Okay, we'll stop grilling you about that.
Oh, all right. That was just a solstice court we had down here during my second reign. I was Crown Prince. That was in that would have been December of 2016. And then that's me in the finals with Duke Sean at my second Crown tournament win. And it was crazy. Sean and I have been fighting each other at this point. We'd been fighting each other for 25 years. Fighter practice. We'd never fought in the finals of Crown before.
Wow.
So after 25 years, it's the first time the two of us had ever faced each other in the finals of Crown. So
it was an epic final.
It was pretty epic. And we were both just stoked. one-shotted him in the first round, and then I lost my mind. I was like, holy crap, I can't do that twice.
Yeah, I think I've watched that fight at least a dozen times because it's just so pretty.
It was a crazy fight. We were both just so jacked up and on adrenaline, just because, like I said, after 25 years of fighting each other at fighter practice, we fought in finals and other little tournaments, but never a crown tournament. We'd never faced each other in a finals of a crown. So
Super cool.
And then that was right after I won. I just made crown prince, so that was just shortly after that. And I don't know what this is. Now that's Cortland and Conrad when they were king and queen of Artemisia. That was during their first reign, which was a very long reign. It was a 9-month reign. Varia was my squire at the time, and so I am not sure what's going on there. That was the beginnings of my Edward I kit at the time. And I abandoned Edward I. I abandoned the mid-13th century because it was beyond my sewing skills. No, I can't. I've got to go back to the 11th century and stay there. Yeah. And so this is, I don't know where that's from either. Probably an uprising or an Estrella. That's probably 1999.
I think Cortland told me. Let me go back and look. Sorry. Take me a second. My computer's not letting me look at it. Go ahead and talk about it if you want.
It's probably, I'm going to guess it's probably 1999. It's probably an Estrella or an uprising again. And this was the beginning of me. I just gone from Viking to Norman. And actually, when I did Norman, I was actually doing Angevin. So I was doing, Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, that time period.
Okay, so she says the one with the 3 knights, he had just won a knightly equestrian tourney.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that was, maybe 2000 then. Yeah. I wasn't doing equestrian until about 2000, 2001.
Do you still do equestrian?
No, I don't. The equestrian program down here is kind of not functioning very well. So yeah, I'm not doing it anymore. I haven't been in the saddle for a while. Been a long time.
So you also, when you went back to Viking, you looked into some of the finds and you measured the shields, and you came out with a shield that was based on a find, right?
Yes.
And you started fighting with the measurements were correct and the weight was correct and all of that. And you sort of started a trend, right?
I don't know. I hope so. I've sold a few, so hopefully guys are using them. They're big. They're much larger than is generally considered SCA standard. The medium-sized shield for a shield from the early Iron Age or the late Iron Age is it's about 34 inches. They're big. The biggest ones are going to get up into the low 40s, and they don't come out smaller than 30 inches. A lot of the fighting technique I do with the round shield was based off of Roland Warzeka, who's in Berlin with HEMA. And he's done a lot of research on Viking shields. And I believe in 2009 in Copenhagen, they dredged a part of the fjord near the city. And in the fjord was a scuttled Viking ship from the early 10th century. And it had been deliberately sunk to block the bay, probably from other Vikings. And on the deck of the ship, they found about 50 shields, all piled up. And they were all about 32 inches in diameter, every single one. Up until that point, a lot of archaeologists thought that the shield fit the man. So the bigger the shield, the bigger the man. But when you find 50 shields that are all exactly the same size, they went, okay, something else is not right. That's not right. You don't have 50 guys exactly the same size. So what's going on? So Roland Warzeka had done some research into Talhofer dueling shields. He was looking at other large center-hilt shields. And he developed a theory on how the shields were being used. And I found it really intriguing what he was talking about. And I remember at the time I wasn't doing Viking, I was doing Norman, and I even began to kind of incorporate some of the concepts that he talked about into my kite shield, and they worked okay. And when I went to Viking in 2014, I was like, that's it. We're going to do this. We're going to try this stuff out. And it's brilliant. I mean, it works tremendously well. Uh, it's a great system. I think he's right on the money. I'll watch his latest research and he'll update something on his Facebook page and I'll think, oh, he's crazy. This can't possibly work. And I'll be like, damn it, he's right. This works.
I when you came out, I loved what you were doing because most, we're around Shield Kingdom mostly. I do not fight around Shield, but everybody sort of holds it out and they, flat. And you came out and you held it on edge, right? You make this big cone and it works beautifully. And I had just never seen that before.
Well, the idea behind it is the whole idea behind it really begins to get to the heart of how you use shields. What's a shield really for? I mean, the idea that a shield is a thing that you hide behind is incorrect. A shield is a thing that depending on the shield you use, you are inviting avenues of attack while denying other avenues of attack. That's all a shield does. It says you can't hit these parts, but go ahead and strike these parts because every shield has a weakness. Those weaknesses aren't weaknesses though, they're deliberate. And they're deliberate into the design of the shield. And so the Viking round shield design, first of all, part of the reason it's that size isn't so that I can hide behind it, but it's so that I can extend my arm into the center of the fight and you can't essentially throw a wrap around it. A wrap shot in the Middle Ages was called a false edge strike or a false edge cut. And there were real things. And so it's designed to create a geometry that defends a lot of area, even though I'm holding that edge forward, and then invites attacks toward the weapon side of my body. So to attack me, you have to move towards my weapon. So my opponent's constantly moving towards my sword, which works out great when I'm trying to hit him with it. So just beginning there, it works out really great. And it's part of the reason why the shield's so large. When the shield gets below 30 inches, the biomechanics behind that kind of design fail. And now I can kind of reach around the back of the shield. I fought guys with bucklers who tried to use it the way I use it, and you can just strike around the back of the shield. There's no protection back there. So that's part of the reason they're that big is because there's something else going on there. Some of it isn't applicable to SCA because some of it you have to be using steel swords to really get some of the function out of, but a lot of it does work. And I've been amazed at how much actually does work. So that's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed round shield a lot because of that.
And is it a center mount grip?
Yep, it is. And then the other thing that you can do is that I'll have guys who will come up, I'll put that edge forward and they'll try to push, flatten the shield. Well, when the shield flattens, and I'm sure every round field fighter knows, once you flatten that tip, I will flip it completely. And now they're facing this way and I'm facing this way. And my shield's flat to them and they can't engage. So you can just flip it on that axis. It's no problem at all. In fact, it's a dangerous thing to do to me when your people are fighting me. They'll go, well, I'm just going to push that shield flat. I'm like, please, hard, push it hard. The harder, the better, even better. Please. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun.
It's like
I love that you are incorporating historical things into SCA fighting and making it work. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, that's just what I like to do. It's what I find fun and I enjoy doing it. And as long as people will allow me to do it, I'll keep doing it. I don't think there's anything wrong with anybody who wants to use a round shield that's smaller than that. I understand that. Or if people want to use other shields, that's great. That's just the thing that I like. I enjoy being able to do that in the SCA.
And it sounds like it's opened up a whole new range game for you, which is really fun.
Yeah, it's changed the entire sort of paradigm for fighting sword and shield for me. It's brought me into a completely different world of fighting. It's opened up tons of different concepts that go well beyond just sword and shield that I'd never even considered before. And again, when you've been fighting for 30 years, it's great to have something that new and fresh to work with. And I have people go, oh, you're really good at it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm really good at it or if I'm just one of the few people doing it. If more people were doing it, I bet there's somebody out there who's better at it than I am. I just haven't run into them yet. And I'm sure I will at some point. Somebody will catch on and do it too. So yeah, it's just a whole new paradigm in fighting, which has been just exciting and fun to be able to explore that.
Awesome. I love that. My husband is playing with footwork right now, and he's been fighting about as long, and it's like he's fresh into fighting again. It's like he kind of had burned out a little bit, and I think that when you play in this game so long, you have to find things like that keep you interested and that keeps it fresh. Because like we were saying before, you watched all this happen before, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And there's always new things you can do and new things to try. I don't really believe there's any really, I don't think I'll ever really find the end of that. I don't think, well, that's it. I know everything.
Right.
My son's been in Kali, Eskrima, and Muay Thai since he was 4. He's 15 now. And I've watched a lot of Kali and Muay Thai classes. And I'll see the instructor go, okay, we're going to do this today. And I'm like, holy crap, I never even thought you can do that. All right, I got to try that out. I'll be watching their feet, or I'll be watching the way they move. I'm like, I never even thought about that before. And I'll get online when I get home and pull up Kali videos and go, holy moly, I never even thought of that, or do this, or they'll come up with another concept. They'll talk about something in Muay Thai and I'll just be like, oh, it never even occurred to me to do that. But there's always stuff to learn. You do have to kind of get out of the box. You have to get away from the SCA sometimes and go look at other people and what they're doing. But you can always bring it back. One of the things Roland Warzeka talks about quite a bit is the human beings, the human body is the human body, and it works a certain way. And the 2 rules you can't break are biomechanics and physics. So that means that you can take a lot of things from other fighting martial arts, and there can be a lot of crossover. You can bring a lot of things in from other martial arts where there's a lot of striking, boxing, traditional boxing, Muay Thai, Kung Fu, all of these other sports where you're trying to hit somebody in the face with something, whether it's a fist or a stick. There's always something there you can incorporate into your technique if you just go looking for it.
Even Tai Chi, that's
oh yeah.
Artemisia is my husband, has been doing Tai Chi and Kung Fu. And he's working right now on the incorporation of Tai Chi into stuff. And it's super fun to watch.
Yeah. Any sport where you're trying to punch somebody is going to have something valuable to teach you. It's striking, again, physics and biomechanics. And those 2 rules they're the same for everybody. They never change. So you can always find something that obeys those 2 rules that you can use to your advantage. Yeah, keep it fresh.
So is your son interested in fighting?
Very much so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very much so. We started kind of putting his kit together because of the pandemic. We haven't gotten out and had to practice too much, but he is very excited about doing it. So of course, because of all the Kali, he wants to be a Florentine fighter. So we already got him a couple of swords. He also took a lot of jujitsu though, so I've got to teach him. He's not going to be able to, do a double leg takedown and put anybody in the
Yes, please.
Yeah.
It's funny. Between us, we have 3 kids, and none of them are interested in fighting.
Oh no, no. My son's he's very interested. He's not interested in tournaments. He's very interested in melees. He's seen me go crashing through a lot of lines in melees and thinks, yeah, I want to put my head down and run into a bunch of guys too. So yeah, he's very excited about it. So
my daughter thinks pell work is cool, but she doesn't actually want to be hit by anybody. So
yeah, you got to get hit. That's the problem. Is you kind of have to like being hit. You kind of have to be sick. You kind of have to enjoy getting struck.
Sick.
Yeah,
that's
always the rule. Yeah.
I don't like getting hit. That's a no from me.
Yeah, you got to be a bit of a sadist. That's Duke Bryan taught me that. Duke Bryan said to me a long time ago, he goes, to be good at this, you kind of have to be the kind of guy who's running up a hill and gets speared hard in the gut and goes flying off his feet down the hill and is laughing the whole time. You kind of have to be that kind of a person. So you kind of have to like being beat up and going back home with a black eye and bruised ribs and showing everybody. Yeah. Special kind of person.
Do you want to talk about the Laurel Dawn or Shaxi?
I feel like we've already kind of talked about that a whole bunch.
Yeah, but he told us a cool story before we went on, and he hasn't actually told it.
Please, sir, tell your laurelling story.
So yeah, the story, I got asked what I got my laurel for, and I said, I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because so right before I got my laurel, I had been chancellor to Duke Conrad and Duchess Cortland during their first reign. It was a very long reign. They did a 9-month reign because we had changed our coronation schedule in the middle of their reign. So they ended up reigning for an extra 3 months. And I had been to every single event. I'd been to Penzig, I'd been to Estrella. I was done with court. So they stepped down, and Duke Reinmar and Albreda had stepped up that evening as king and queen, and they were doing their first court as king and queen. And I was in another room drinking beer And I had some ladies in waiting came running in and said, "Oh, you got to come to court. You got to be in court." And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't. No way. I've been to every court for 9 months. I do not need to be in court." And so she left, and she came back 5 minutes later. She goes, "No, no, I'm being told you have to be in court right now." And I'm like, "No, I don't care what's happening. I don't care. I'm not going to court. There's no way you're getting me in there." So she left, and she came back. She goes, "Oh, your squire's getting an award. You have to come to court." And I said, "Oh, good for him. Good for him. Not going to court. No way." And I don't know. I think the people I was drinking with finally said, "Please go see what they're talking about. Please just, they're like, you're cut off until you go look." And they didn't know. They were just like, "We're tired of ladies in waiting coming back here bugging us." So I poked my head in, and they were pretty much at the end of my laurel ceremony when I poked my head in. And they called me up my name with the laurel medallion on me, and they sent me away. I mean, seriously, I was there for maybe 4 minutes of my whole ceremony. I have no idea what anybody said about me. I have no idea what they said I was getting it for. They had all these laurels speak about how great I was, and it was great, I'm sure. I'm sure I would have been flattered, but I missed all of it. Missed the whole thing. So I have no idea, really. I got told later what it was for, but I've been told also several different things by people, so I don't think anybody else really knows either. So
You wouldn't have remembered anything anyone said anyway.
No, I would not have. No. No. So we made it up here, I think, but yeah.
But it sounds like your passion. I like to ask the question, of laurels, what is your passion? What is your geek? Because I don't know what I was laureled for either. I would know what I was doing when I got laureled, but I don't know what it was for. So what is your geek? What is your passion?
Well, I mean, it really is just kind of getting into the mind and the situations of the people. Well, okay. We talk about in the essay, we say, well, we're here, we create these little moments where we suspend disbelief and we can kind of pretend we're in a medieval kingdom doing medieval things. I wanted to know kind of what it was like for the actual medieval person at the time, what was it like for them? So one of the reasons doing Viking is actually really good at this, because it's actually easier and cheaper to do Viking historically accurate than to say to do 14th century or 15th century. That's expensive and time consuming. It's very hard. Viking's easy to do that. You can go, "Oh, I don't even need chainmail for this." Okay. But to try to experience what it was like for these people, these were real people who were not physically any different than us. And they had the same basic interests, the same likes and dislikes. They didn't like being dirty. They didn't like being cold or being hot. They didn't like it any more than we do. And so it's really just being able to go to an event and going, okay, I want to experience what they experience. What am I going to have to do? Well, if I show up into an event with motorcycle boots on and sweatpants and a nice cotton poly t-shirt, tunic and all this stuff, I am not experiencing what they're experiencing. I need to be able to, you have to have the right equipment, the right costuming, not because it looks right or because it looks a certain way. A lot of the time, it doesn't look like what people think it looked like. A lot of people think it's supposed to look different than it does. But so that it functions that way, and it's something I used to call the Muddy Pup Theory. The putties, the Winnegas that you wear, well, why do they wear those, right? Why would they wear those? That was the question. Somebody said to me one time, well, they wore them because it kept burrs and grass and things from sticking to the legs. It does the exact opposite of that. Those things catch like crazy. So I was like, okay, that's not why they wore them. Then somebody said, well, it keeps your feet warm. It does not keep your feet warm, and you lose zero body heat through your calves. So it's not doing anything to keep you warm. And I was king at Pennsic, and it was raining, of course, it's Pennsic, and there was lots of mud, of course. And I was going out that evening, and everybody else was putting on modern shoes and boots. And I said, no, I'm going to try this tonight. And I realized what it does is it kept water out of your socks and water out of your boots, and more particularly like mud and crap. It would kind of cling to that. And then I watched a documentary on Deadwood, the HBO series, and they talked about how the street in Deadwood was 6 inches of horse and cow manure and pee and yuck. And that's why the boots were so high. Well, the boots from the Viking period and the Norman period, they're not very high. We don't really see high boots until the mid 11th century. So I was like, this is what they were for. They took the place of that. So you jumped off your horse in the middle of York. That road was going to be as bad as Deadwood's, if not worse. and you could go in the house and you could take these off. The mud would dry off the wool. It didn't have to be washed, and it kept the filth out of your pants and out of your shoes. And later I discovered the theory is probably Thor Ewing's book on Viking costume. It's probably something to do with sailors. You're jumping into the water knee high. You can quickly remove this, and you're in the big high brace, the big poofy. They call them the roost pants, right? The big poofy pants. Those are probably for sailors. So that's why I do it. Is you won't figure that out unless you go do it yourself. You've got to go out. You've got to use the materials they used. You have to build it as close to the way they built it as you possibly can. And then you have to go out into conditions that they were in, and you have to just suck it up and try it out. And that's how you figure this stuff out. That's really what I geek on, is when something like that works. So like the Viking round shield. When I build the round shield to the specs of an actual Viking shield that they found in Lithuania from the 10th century, and I go out and use it, and it works the way that you theorize it's working, you're onto something. You're figuring out what life was really like for these individuals, for these people. So that's the thing that keeps me interested in it. It's a long answer.
I totally get that. I share that. It's fun.
Yeah.
Very cool. So
my husband keeps trying to do modern things with our use airplane rivets instead of the sinew to tie the slats, and I'm like, no.
He'll always find out that the way they did it is probably better. Every time we try to reinvent the wheel, we make it worse.
Right?
It was done. It was the way it was done then is the way it probably ought to be done. You probably don't need to try to reinvent that again. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Rifkin?
Oh, I was going to change the subject. There was a big gap between your first and second reign, and I'm just wondering what did you notice had changed in the SCA generally, or reigning specifically, between those two reigns?
Not much, really. Not a lot. My first reign, yeah, I came down with a real big case of real life after my first reign. Between my first reign and my second reign, I lost both of my parents. I lost a couple of good friends. I had a heart condition. I blew out my knee. I lost the ACL in my right knee. Got divorced. A lot of really real life stuff got in the way. So when I decided to do another reign, I thought a lot would have changed, but it really didn't. It really had stayed the same. A lot of the politics had not changed, had not moved on. A lot of the faces, of course, have changed, a lot of different people, but they're still doing the same things they always did. So it seems like there's some truisms in the SCA that just won't go away.
Well, maybe that's disappointing if the politics hadn't changed at all.
Well, listen, if you're going to get it, if you don't like politics, if you can't handle politics, don't win crown. Stay away from winning crown. Just don't do it, because, man, you got to love it, or at least be able to cope with it somehow. So, yeah.
Funny.
Interesting. You and I talked a little bit before we went live about the different things people are doing in the SCA to kind of cope with not being able to meet. And you were saying that you just kind of haven't been participating at all. And one of the things that we usually ask is what of the things that are going on that people are doing during COVID do you want to see continue on? Like, what changes should we keep as we start to gather again?
I have no idea. I mean, seriously, I'm not big on doing things online. I mean, a big part of the SCA to me is physically going out and doing things. Like you can't do the Muddy Pup Theory at home on a computer. You got to go out and do it. What I've been doing though is working on, again, making my stuff even more historically accurate than it was even last year. It was okay last year. I knew last year there were things I ought to be doing. Narrowing the time area, the time period and the region of Scandinavia I'm trying to do, narrowing that down. I've done that. Making new garb, I'm doing that. Little changes to the kit, just kind of getting things ready so that when we do come back out, it can kind of be a whole new experience. So that when I do go, we were able to go back and meet in person. I can go back out and go, I didn't waste that time. Losing weight, of course, is a big one. COVID will make you gain weight. So I put on about 12 pounds. I didn't need 12 more pounds. That's not necessary. So trying to get back in shape. just trying to get things ready so that when we do get to go and meet in person again, I can have again a new experience. It can be a new thing. So it doesn't feel like this time wasted, this time of being stuck in the house and nothing to do and sitting around staring at the walls. It felt like, don't waste this time. The universe kind of pressed the pause button on a lot of things. You've got a good opportunity here if you use it properly to make the most of it. So that's mostly what I've been doing.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Dawn.
Well, I was just going to say, you kind of skimmed over it, but you actually contracted COVID and had to deal with recovering from that as well.
Yeah.
So
I caught COVID at the end of June, and it laid me out for good 8 weeks. I probably wasn't fully recovered for about 12 weeks. And then I've been having kind of weird, after symptoms. I thought, oh, am I one of these long haulers or something? What's going on? And recently went in and I need to see a rheumatologist, but it's probably left me with arthritis, with rheumatoid arthritis. That's not uncommon with viral infections. That's not something unique to COVID. A lot of people who deal with a severe viral infection will find that they'll come away with osteoarthritis or psoriatic arthritis. It's not uncommon. So dealing with that. A big thing I've been doing to do is rebuild my lung capacity. That lung capacity thing is no joke. It kills your lungs. And it's not like, I didn't develop a pneumonia, which was good, but the lung capacity issue is weird. You don't get that wheezy, choky, croupy cough kind of tightness in the chest with this. You just feel like everywhere you've gone, you've jogged to. Like you get up from the living room to the kitchen and it feels like you ran a mile. I'd walk up a flight of stairs, and in July, I would have to sit down in the middle stair and catch my breath before I could finish the flight of stairs. That's how bad it was. So it's, I just told myself, look, you exercise, science, sports, medicine guy, you know how to do this. So hour-long walks every night, changing the diet to help reduce inflammation and things like that. It helps with the weight loss too. So there's been a lot of that. And I think I'm making pretty good recovery from what I'm reading about other people who've had COVID as severe as I had it. I'm lucky. I didn't have to. I was never admitted. I went to the ER, but they didn't admit me, which was good. So I'm pretty lucky. I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important that people know that they know somebody who has had this and that it's real. And
yeah, it's real. Like I said, if people don't think COVID's real, I'd love to hear what you think I had, because they thought I had COVID. They had tests that said I had COVID. I believed them. I was like, okay, I believe you. Yeah. Although I still joke. I'll tell my son's mother every once in a while. It's a good thing I never had COVID. She'll look at me like, yeah, it's a good thing that never happened to me. She's like, okay.
People are crazy right now.
Yeah. Well, it's stress. It's weird. I mean, who would have thought? Would you have thought in your lifetime you would have lived through a 100-year, once in a century pandemic?
No.
No one. No, none of us have. It's just when my son was really having a hard time with this over the summer, and I was like, I don't know what to. It's like, I got nothing. This is new to me too. We'll figure this out together. I didn't have any good advice to tell him. I was like, I don't know how do you survive my grandfather did. My grandfather survived Spanish flu. He fought World War I and had Spanish flu. He died a long time ago, so I have no idea how he coped. I would love to have picked his brain now, but
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. We just keep telling our kids, we keep talking about resilience, and you just have to continue on and find out what works for you and make your life as good a quality as you can make it.
Yeah, make something, do something with this time. I mean, if you're not sick and if you're not dealing with illness in your home, you do have an opportunity. Like I said, it's like time, hit the pause button. I haven't had to work, so I'm like, okay, don't waste this time. I'm gonna have to get a job here in the next year, get back out there. But that you got time to do something, let's take advantage of it. Let's make the most of it. Let's make things better for yourself and your family with this time that you have it. You can still turn it into something positive. It doesn't have to be sitting around going, oh, when do we this over? You can find something to do with it. So.
Yeah, I was telling Ashaxi last week, I think, that I have never had so many STA clothes. Like I was like a one outfit person, pretty much. I had more fighting clothes than I had like hanging out clothes. And now I'm having problems with closet space because I've been so productive.
I've given away a lot of old garb this year. I've given away a lot of stuff. Like, when we're ready, here's garb. Here you go. Yeah. Clean out the closet.
But I've been working the whole time too. But you know, when you're not traveling to events and then fighting all weekend, you have a lot of time for other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that made, I mean, you know, I did my last 2 reigns, I did almost back to back. I only had about a year off between the two. And I was going to events constantly. And I knew, I was like, oh, I want to stop wearing this. I should be wearing this. Ought to be doing that. I need to change all this. You just don't have time. And so when we went into the lockdown, there was a part of me that went, oh, okay, good. No events. Okay, I don't have to go to an event. I got time to sit and get some stuff taken care of. So, yeah.
But nobody wanted a year and a half. So.
No, that's a little long.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little too long. 8 months was plenty. We're good. Yeah.
I think this person is your student, Jason Tanner.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to know how do you stay a creative?
Well, I mean, like I said, when there's you've got to keep your nose in the book. Really, you have to keep doing research. You have to keep looking into the book. So it's not so much about staying creative as much as it is staying motivated to read that new news article, to look into that book, to try to find out something. You have to stay motivated to do the research, because you'll do the research, you'll find something. Yeah. There'll be something that will pique your interest, some new little factor, some new little thing that will keep you motivated. So that's more the question, is how do you stay motivated to continue to do the research into the period, you know, that you're interested in? I think that's the harder part. I think a lot of people in the SCA, for example, I know a lot of people who do the arts and sciences, they come in and they're interested in costuming, let's say, but they're not particularly interested in a specific time period of costuming, more general costuming. They like sewing, they like fabric, they like the arts and crafts side of it. They get intrigued by doing the historically accurate side of it for reasons of, you know, complexity or difficulty, or it's intriguing creatively. But what I tend to find is that if you can find a time period, and it doesn't have to be like a time period and then to the exclusion of all others, but if you can get interested in the time period in a whole, in context, the whole period of history, you're going to find it's easier to stay motivated creatively, because you're going to begin to realize that there are multiple influences that influence one region. I mean, for example, I'll see websites in Viking reenactment groups where they'll say, well, it's got to be Norse to be Viking. It's got to be Norse. And I began to realize, I was like, I don't know what that means, because the coats we dig up are Hungarian, and the belts are Turkish, and the swords are Frankish, and the chainmail and some of this is German, and these shoes are English, and they're found in Viking graves. I'm like, I don't know what you mean by Norse. Do you mean a Scandinavian find? We know that the things that come in Scandinavia aren't always from Scandinavia. So, or another example with the Norman period I was researching, what was I researching? I was trying to research like local regions the Normans had influence on, and I found myself going, well, I guess I have to read about all of the popes from the 11th century and the schism between the Roman Catholic and the Greek Orthodox. And suddenly I'm reading books on the papacy, the reformist popes. I'm reading about, you know, Gregory the Ninth and all these guys. And I'm like, this is not what I had in mind. All I wanted to know if it was possible for me to use this kind of mug at an event. Now I'm reading about the Pope. But that's what happens, is that you get into the period to stay creative, and that's what will happen. You'll find those things will come out as you study the period as a whole, rather than just in a chunk, rather than just, well, what did they wear on their feet? Okay, well, why did they wear that on their feet? Why didn't they wear something else? And is that something that they really wore, or did they get that from somebody else? Is somebody else wearing that on their feet? And if they are, why are they wearing that on their feet? And so forth and so on. You get down the rabbit hole, you'll start finding it's easy to stay creative. In fact, you'll find you don't have enough time to be as creative as you'd like to be.
That's where I'm at. There's so much, like I have this room full of fabric and beads and things, and I have a plan for all of it. Right.
Yeah. I realized I wanted to do, I was going to focus a lot of my garb on the Hedeby, Haithabu graves. So I was like, all right, so I got to get rid of the overtunics, and I got to start making the coats, the caftans as they call them. And so I started ordering wool in June. I've got big piles of wool I'm looking at. And it's what's nice about it is normally if I ordered this wool, I go, okay, I got 2 weeks to make this coat. I got to have it for this event. Now I can just sit and kind of look at it. And you can kind of I have to visualize it in my mind. I have to be able to see the finished product before I can even start cutting fabric. And I've had time to just sit and look at it and think about it. It's been nice to be able to take that creative time to just sort of go, I don't have to cut this thing up. I don't have to have this thing ready by next Saturday. I can take the time and really kind of think about how I want to put this together. And I can look at patterns online and how are we going to decorate it? What colors can I use and what colors do I want to use? It's been a little nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, same.
I think it's super important to sort of be fearless as well. Like what you make doesn't have to look like what everybody else is making from that time period. There's a lot of room for extrapolation.
Right.
And just, don't worry about if people like, I don't understand what that is. My squire and I are gonna, the 3D Valkyrie figure that they found that sort of, she looks like she's kind of wearing a tank top and an asymmetrical.
No, I haven't seen this.
Oh, well, we're going to make that outfit, both of us.
Uh-huh.
And we've been comparing notes and it's super fun. Nobody does stuff like that. And, it's just something to push yourself. Right.
Yeah, it's exactly it. That's exactly it. You're looking at different parts of the time period. You're looking at things in a larger context, I think really matters. And suddenly you realize that there's so much more going on than just, the SCA kind of has a bad habit of saying, like think of the coats that everybody wears, the Viking coats that are very popular.
Yeah.
They're not actually Viking.
No.
They didn't actually exist. What happened is somebody made one, it looked really cool, looked good enough, and they do look good. I'm not knocking anybody who's wearing those coats. If somebody wants to make me one and send me one, I will wear it. That's fine. If you want to do that, I have no problem with that. But they aren't particularly from a particular find or a particular grave or anything like that. They just look right and they kind of catch on. And so that kind of sets a standard. I mean, let's be honest, Viking apron dresses, for example, we don't really have a full Viking apron dress. They're all extrapolated. Yeah.
Nobody knows how long they were, how full they were.
Or if they
We have some idea of how big the straps were and
we have
fitted.
Yeah, we have some accepted extrapolations from archaeologists who were are credible and made pretty good logical assumptions on how they're made. But but what happens? You saw somebody with an apron dress you liked and you copied it and it's good enough because what do we know? We don't know anymore.
Right.
We don't know. So
and
it's okay to break away from that.
Yeah, there are people who die on that mountain. They're like, no, this is the apron dress. This is how it was done, and you're doing it wrong. And it's like, oh my God, no.
Well,
people's souls.
You can't really see it. I'm wearing my cloak because I'm sitting in front of a fireplace and it's drafty. But like the Viking cloaks, the square cloaks, right? The sources say, for example, in Fodlan says they pinned it over one shoulder and left one arm free. Well, the assumption is that the pin sits on the right shoulder and then it hangs down both sides. I've noticed that does not keep me warm at all. It doesn't trap any body heat. It's in the way. So I wear mine over my left shoulder and pinned on my hip.
Yeah.
And then I can pull it up and it keeps my back, the larger flat surfaces of my body are covered and it keeps me perfectly warm. This is a way that a lot of people have theorized that they did wear them because it doesn't specifically say that it was pinned here or it's just pinned and one arm's free. So there's a lot of different ways you can play around with the source material.
Use your arm free to do all the things you need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed that it doesn't like to stay there either.
No, it doesn't. It wants to choke you. It kind of gets in the way. And we try to think of it as a cloak, like a cloak. We think of a cape. And I'm sure that they did wear them. This is probably a very versatile garment that you probably could have worn 100 different ways. Any way you can think of wearing it, they could think of wearing it, unless there was some taboo wearing it that way. So it's okay to break away from those normal modes and play around a little bit. I mean, I think you do kind of have to be brave, like Roland Warzeka and the round shield stuff. The SCA is not a big fan of giant round shields, and here I am. My round shield now I have is almost 34 inches in diameter. It's the biggest shield I've ever used. Excuse me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get crap for this. But I don't, because I'm doing something specific. There's something specific and deliberate behind it. I'm doing something. I'm trying to do something that is historical. I'm checking a theory basically, and people have been pretty understanding that, and a lot of people have been interested in doing it too. Plus, big shields are fun. I mean, who doesn't like the look of a giant shield?
It's one of the most important things that I tell people that are doing their own research, and they're like, well, I want to do it this way, but so and so who's like the god of doing this has all these other theories. And I'm like, come up with your own theories, back them up, and do your thing. I will fight for you.
I think if you're looking at becoming a laurel, I think it's really critical that you're able to take period evidence and be able to construct your own theory. I remember I went to Ontario West War one year, and I'd only been a laurel for about a year or so, and I met Mistress Hillary from the West, and she asked me, she goes, so what's your own theory on something that you got your laurel for? And part of what I got my laurel for was researching medieval knighthood and chivalry, actual medieval period chivalry and knighthood. And I had read several versions of William Marshall's story by different authors. And I began to realize that a lot of the stories in his youth did not match the archaeology for the time period. Like, there's talking about things that happened to guys in the 1230s. It couldn't have happened to something like the helmet being crushed around his head. Do you know the story where he goes to a tournament and he's fought so hard, he's taken so many blows, because rhino hiding was a chivalry thing in the Middle Ages. You wanted to be able to take blows and not fall down. That was considered really cool. Not the case now, but that was then. And he'd had his helmet crushed around his head because he had taken so many blows during this tournament, and he had to go to the smithy, and they had to cut the great helm off. They had to cut the rivets with a chisel, and that's the story. Well, this was something that was supposed to have happened to William Marshall when he was a young man, so probably in his late 20s. Well, in his late 20s, great helms weren't a thing. They didn't exist. They maybe had helms that had a little face, but they were a single conical, almost the Norman style helmet. And I'm thinking, could that have crushed around his head? Maybe. Or is it more likely, since it was his grandson that commissioned the story, is it more likely that his grandson went around and just collected stories from 13th century knights and then attributed them to his grandfather? That's a much more likely possibility. It's possible that none of the things that happened in that story happened to him. It's possible. And that was the only thing I was kind of mulling on at the time, but it does kind of change your ideas about, about things in the Middle Ages. We take it as rote, as Bible. And of course, you shouldn't do that either. But it does take a little courage. It takes a little courage to buck trends in the SCA.
Yeah. And it's necessary on your path to being a laurel.
It is. You have to be able to ask those questions.
Yeah.
You have to be able to, because and again, like if you didn't, I only was able to figure that out because I was looking at the archaeology as well. Archaeology is something that a lot of people, a lot of laurels tend to miss. They tend to overlook. They don't look at the archaeological evidence. They don't look at the physical evidence. They look at the written evidence, the things that they see in manuscripts and things like that. Well, if you look at the Morgan Bible, you'd think everybody at the siege of Jerusalem when the Romans invaded was in 13th century armor. I mean, it's ridiculous. They were making stuff up just as much as we are most of the time. So you kind of have to be able to get the bigger picture. Again, looking at things in a larger context kind of helps with that research too. And it will help you buck trends, because you'll go, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't add up. Yeah,
for sure. I love all that.
Well, should we transition to the final 10 since we've been going about an hour and a half?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
First, is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that you haven't had a chance to discuss?
Oh no, I'm all good. Whatever you guys want to talk about, I have no agenda. So.
Okay. What event have you never gone to that you would like to go to?
Gulf Wars. I was supposed. I keep planning on going, and then I keep crapping out. I don't know why. I'm a coward. I just gotta man up and go. And then Gulf Wars. So I was gonna go to Gulf Wars this year, of course, and then actually in January something came up and I couldn't go, and everybody was really mad at me because I'd made all these promises to go, and then of course they canceled it, and I was very, sad that they canceled it, so that nobody else got to go too. So
yeah, there's going to be a big Artemisia camp, and they were going to host me.
I know. So Gulf Wars and Great Western War, I'd like to go to that one as well. Yeah,
that's a good one. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
I don't know. I don't know. I know there's a lot of guys I'd like to get a chance to fight again that I won't get a chance to fight again. I'd love to get a chance to fight Sir Magnus again. He's out. He can't fight anymore. Duke Michael, I'd love to get a chance to fight him again, especially with a lot of stuff I've learned now. I'd like to see how it works with him. Sir Harai, who passed away, Sir Hudahar, who passed away, Kaveldov, Master Love, who passed away. There's a lot of guys who aren't here anymore that I'd give anything to be able to fight again. But I don't know. Otherwise, anybody else, I'm not sure. I just don't know who's out there. I've fought a lot of really great guys. I've really fought a lot of really, really awesome guys over the years. I've had a chance to fight some of the best fighters in the SCA, and I'm happy to, hopefully I'll get to fight them again soon too. Cool.
What's your favorite Pennsic story?
Oh, I don't think I can tell it online.
Okay.
I don't think I can. No, I can't.
That'll be an around the fire story someday.
Yeah, I've got a few, but that's not for here. No.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you have a Pennsic or Estrella story that you can tell online?
Yeah, I got one. My first Pennsic I went to was when Duke Conrad was king, and we were fighting with the East Kingdom, and it was the end of the woods battle, and it was like 117 degrees, and we were just exhausted. And so there's me and Duke Conrad and Duke Kelson and Sir Balin Valier from the East Kingdom sitting there, and we could barely see our hands in front of our face. We were so exhausted. And Balin, and I was Ronin at the time, and this was a long time ago, and Balin looked at everybody, goes, well, Sir Ronin and I are running back to camp, running all the way back down to the Serengeti, where Artemisia was camped across from Merchant's Row. So it's like a mile and a half or something down from the top of the woods battle back down to the camp. And I looked at him like, we are? And he got him and said, okay, we'll see you guys later. And I was like, I guess I'm running back to camp. And so we got up, and I shouldn't be telling this story either, but it's too late now. It's not bad. It's just, Balin's gonna be mad at me if he hears me telling the story, because I'm outing a secret. So we get up so you go up out of the woods, and there's a road that kind of runs, parallel to the property, and then there's a road that runs down back towards camps. So we get back up onto the top road, and everybody, the whole army from the East Kingdom is out there, and Balin yells, hey, Sir Ronin and I are running back to camp, and they all go nuts. They start screaming, yeah, and it's like chariots of fire. And so we start running in armor with all of our gear. And we run down to where the road turns to go downhill. And by the time I get there, I've only been running maybe 50 yards. I'm already seeing stars. And I think to myself, okay, you have two choices. You can either run all the way back to camp, or you can die on this hill, but you cannot stop running. Those are the only two choices. So I keep running, and we get about halfway down the hill, and Balin running runs back to me, because I'm way behind him. And he goes, can you see anybody behind us? And I look back up the hill, and I go, no, I can't see anybody. And he goes, well, why are you running? Are you trying to kill us? And I said, you said we're running back to camp. And he goes, that's insane. Nobody runs back to camp. We'll never get back to camp. We'll be dead long before that. Nobody runs back to camp. You run till no one can see you, and then we're going to walk back to camp. And then when you get within about 30 feet of camp, run in and go, whew, I ran all the way back. And I'm like, you know what? You got to fill me in on this crap before we start, because I'm too gullible for all of this. So that's one of my cleaner, safer Pennsic stories. But yeah, I don't have any great stories about fighting anybody or anything like that. Those are my stories.
Okay. Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
Gee. Who do I like to watch fight? I certainly like watching Sir Michael fight quite a bit. I like watching him fight quite a bit. Master Kudu, who was the first master here, he's moved back east. He was a great one to watch fight. I don't know. There's so many. There's so many.
Are you a video watcher, or are you just an in-person watcher?
No, in person. I don't really watch the videos for too much. Yeah, I try to, if I can watch in person, I will, but I don't really I'm not really into that kind of studying with the fighting. that often. I want to be there in person and see what I can see. Sometimes I just go out and fight somebody cold and see what happens. I mean, I've gone out and fought people, and I fought Duke Sven from Onstiora a few years ago, and I had heard a lot of stories about him, and I'd never seen him fight before. And I went out to fight him, and he completely did something. He was completely different than what I'd been told. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get my ass beat now. Let's just get our ass beat and watch what happens, you know? So sometimes I'll watch the fight while I'm getting hit.
Right.
You know, you just go, what does he do if I do that? Oh, he hits me. What if I do this? Oh, he hits me. So I did that. I've done that before.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Great way to learn.
I think Michael's a great answer. Michael is incredible. His fighting mind is like unrivaled.
Well, that's another great example of a guy who's taken martial arts and actual fighting technique and been able to translate it over to the SCA very successfully. Yeah. And he's been able to find a weapon form and a system that works for him that well. But just a lot of good stuff to watch when you watch him fight.
Do you have a mentor or a hero in the SCA, and if so, who is it?
Probably, I think my three mentors would be, Viscount Raphael, Duke Thorfinn, and Duke Brian. They were very similar enough that they never really contradicted each other, but they all sort of taught me something very different. I wouldn't say they were heroes. Let's be honest. I know them too well. Spent too much time with them away from events. I know what goes on. But definitely mentors. They all taught me a little bit about, playing the SCA, fighting in the SCA, being a knight, being a peer, being king. I've all learned a little bit from each of them. I think it's funny. Even when I'm king, I'll catch myself doing something that I'm like, wow, that's very Duke Brian, or that's very Duke Thorfinn. He would have done that too, or thinking like that. Catching myself doing little things like that. Little things, not things that other people would notice, but little tiny minute things.
Cool. If you had to recommend one event in your kingdom for someone out of kingdom to go to, which one would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to pick two because if you're a straight up fighter, you need to come to Melee Madness down here, where you get to fight in a real castle. It's one of the best events that we have in the kingdom. It's brutal. It's a brutal day of fighting, and Melee Madness is just fighting. Otherwise, I think the other one I would really recommend to people is Harvest War. It's a beautiful site. It's a beautiful event. It's really laid back. It's a lot of fun. It's up in the mountains. After a long, hot summer of camping, it's finally starting to go off. The leaves start to change. It's one that we really look forward to. It's really the only event this year I was just really kicking myself that we didn't get to have. I was really sad that we didn't get to have Harvest War.
Cool. All right, we already asked the book question. What is your favorite in-kingdom tradition?
I don't know. I don't know what traditions we do that others don't do.
That's okay.
I have no idea.
Cool.
I don't know.
What do you think is the most important trait to become a successful fighter?
Resilience. I mean, you've got to not only physical resilience, but mental and spiritual resilience. You get the crap beat out of you mentally, physically, emotionally. You've got to, the most important thing about any kind of warrior or any kind of fighter isn't necessarily, it's absolutely true. Whether or not you get knocked down, it's do you get back up. Everybody gets knocked down. Even the greatest fighters get knocked down eventually. And you've got to get back up and keep going. And if you can't muster that kind of resilience, you're just not going to get very far, because something is going to break your spirit. Something's going to break you. So it's resilience. And most of the time I find it's more the mental, emotional, and spiritual resilience. Physical resilience is easy because bruises heal, bones mend, but mental scars and psychological scars really have an impact. And being able to find a way to get past that. And I think resilience is the key. Even if you're not the best fighter skill-wise, if you've got more resilient, I've met so many fighters better than me over the years that it's ridiculous. I couldn't begin to list them. Most of them are not here. I still am. And it's not because I'm a great fighter or I'm a better fighter than they were. It's because I was able to muster some kind of resilience that they couldn't muster. Or just time itself eventually wore them down. Time's coming for me now too. But just resilience is I think the most important attribute you could have as a fighter.
Very cool. All right. Well, those are the final questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Grace. I really enjoyed having you on and talking to you tonight.
No, thank you. It was fun. I'm glad I got a chance to do it.
Me too. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Who do we have next week?
Next week, we are talking to His Grace Duke Dak from Ontier, which will be, I'm personally looking forward to it because he's one of my mentors. And he should have some good stories, and I think we should have some fun pictures to look at, and it should be a good time.
And I think I have Mistress Bree on Tuesday, so that'll be super cool too. She is a very avid watcher of everything, and so she's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, I'm gonna interview Duke Basil on Monday from Artemisia, and then Duke Almaric from Ontier in Atlantia on Sunday. So tune in; those should be good ones. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Your Grace.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Have a good night.